Mass murders, curses, and human skull helmets. Oh my. Are you ready to hear about some seriously creepy discoveries? Well then, you clicked on the right video. From ancient burial sites filled with eerie artifacts to mysterious structures that hold dark secrets, today we're diving into the spine-chilling world of archaeology. So grab your popcorn and maybe a nightlight, because some of these stories are sure to give you nightmares. Mother and child. Digging up a skeleton is creepy in itself, but uncovering the skeletons of a mother and her child is even more chilling. In the past couple of years, this has happened more than once during archaeological digs. The most heartbreaking cases come from ancient Egypt and medieval Italy. In 2018, archaeologists made an astonishing find near Aswan, Egypt, a burial dating back 3,700 years. It contained the skeleton of a young woman, likely in her mid-20s, who died during childbirth. Beside her, the tiny bones of her unborn baby were discovered nestled within her pelvis, positioned as if birth was imminent. So, what went wrong? Dr. Mindy Petre, the lead osteologist, explained that the woman's pelvic bones showed signs of a possible misalignment or injury, which could have obstructed the baby's passage during delivery. Back then, without modern medicine or surgery, even minor complications could be fatal. The woman's burial is quite interesting. She was laid to rest with her knees close to her body, wrapped in a leather shroud, a unique burial style. Her grave contained 2 pots, a jar and a polished bowl, alongside unfinished ostrich eggshell beads. These beads might indicate that she was a respected bead maker, with her family honoring her trade by placing the materials beside her in the grave. It's a small but touching detail. A year later in Bologna, Italy, archaeologists uncovered a similarly haunting scene. They found the remains of a medieval woman from the 7th or 8th century AD. She too had a baby with her, though the baby was expelled from her body in what's called a coffin birth. What does that mean? Well, this strange event occurs when gases build up in a deceased mother's body, causing the fetus to be pushed out post-mortem. This medieval mother's skeleton had another unusual feature, a cut on her forehead with a small hole nearby, likely the result of an ancient skull surgery called trepanation. Trepanation was sometimes performed to relieve pressure in the skull. The procedure could have been an attempt to treat preeclampsia or eclampsia, which are serious pregnancy complications that can cause seizures. Despite the efforts, the woman didn't survive, and her baby's life tragically ended with hers. These 2 cases highlight ancient struggles with childbirth. Although maternal and infant mortality were common back then, actual burials of mothers with their babies are rare, making these discoveries as fascinating as they are grim. Cannibalism in Jamestown. Imagine arriving in a new world with hopes of building a thriving colony, only to be trapped in one of the darkest winters possible. That's what happened to the first permanent English settlers in Jamestown, Virginia. By 1609 and 1610, things got so bad that some settlers turned to cannibalism just to survive. In 2013, archaeologists found proof of this chilling moment in history when they found the remains of a young girl in a trash pit at James Fort. The remains, specifically a skull and a leg bone, belonged to a 14-year-old girl, and tragically, her bones tell a gruesome story. Scientists, including forensic anthropologist Doug Owsley from the Smithsonian, found signs of cuts and marks that clearly indicate her body was dismembered. These cuts were not the work of a skilled butcher, but someone who, out of desperation, was attempting to cut the flesh for food. Marks on her skull show attempts to extract her brain, and other cuts show efforts to remove facial tissue. It was a horrific sight, but the signs were unmistakable. The settlers were starving, and any flesh that could be eaten was a last resort. But what led them to such a desperate point? The winter of 1609 and 1610, known as the Starving Time, was absolutely brutal if you couldn't guess by the name of the time period. Supplies were scarce, and the settlers were trapped within the fort as conflict with the nearby Native Americans prevented them from foraging or hunting. To survive, they first ate horses, then moved on to pets like dogs and cats, and eventually rats, mice, and even snakes. When there was nothing else, they resorted to chewing on leather from their shoes. Yet the hunger persisted, and soon they turned to the dead. The girl's bones provided the first solid evidence of this haunting chapter. Historical documents had suggested cannibalism, but now there was physical proof. Further analysis revealed that she was English, likely from a wealthier family, given her diet before coming to Jamestown. Using forensic reconstruction, scientists were even able to reconstruct her face from her skull. This was the first time a face was given to one of the victims of the starving time. This period wasn't just about starvation, it was about survival in unimaginable circumstances. Only 60 of the original 300 settlers made it through that deadly winter. Just when things seemed beyond saving, relief finally arrived in the form of Lord Delaware, who brought food and new colonists to Jamestown. With his help, the surviving settlers could start to rebuild and continue their dreams of a new life in America. Although they were likely haunted for the rest of their lives by the faces of those they resorted to eating when all hope was lost. As Dr. Owsley put it, they did what they had to do. Do you think you would turn to cannibalism if you were in a life or death situation like the settlers of Jamestown? Let me know in the comments below. Skull helmets. It's not every day that you find skeletons wearing helmets made of human skulls. In the ancient world, death was often seen as a transition, not an end. But some cultures took this belief to extreme lengths. In the case of the Guangala people of Ecuador, their burial rituals were particularly unsettling, involving the use of human skulls in a way that defies explanation. Between 2014 and 2016, archaeologists unearthed a pair of 2,100-year-old funerary mounds, but what they found was truly bizarre. Inside these ancient burial mounds, researchers uncovered the remains of two infants, each wearing a helmet made from the skull of an older child. This burial was part of a ritual performed by the Guangala culture around 100 BC, and it's the only evidence found so far of skulls used as mortuary helmets for infants. Researchers studying these remains reported that one of the babies was around 18 months old and the other between 6 and 9 months. The older baby's helmet was crafted from a skull belonging to a child aged 4 to 12, while the younger child's helmet came from a child who had likely been between 2 and 12 years old. Now here's where things get even creepier. The skulls were likely put on the infants' heads while they still had flesh on them. The infants' tiny skulls were crudely capped with the decaying flesh-covered skulls of older children. How gruesome is that? Usually bare bone would fall apart quickly, so the fact that these helmets held together suggests that the skulls were not completely bare. Between the layers of these skulls, archaeologists also found small objects like a shell and even a tiny finger bone. But why did the Guangala people do this? The answer is still a mystery, though researchers have some theories. Heads in pre-Columbian South America often symbolized power, ancestors, or even conquest. And so it's possible these skull helmets were meant to protect the infant spirits on their journey to the afterlife. Another theory suggests that the skulls might have belonged to the baby's ancestors. If true, this would have symbolized a strong connection to family or provided some sort of supernatural protection from the world beyond. Interestingly, a nearby volcano may hold clues to the reason behind these unusual burials. Evidence of ash around the burial site hints that the volcano was active at the time, possibly disrupting agriculture. Malnutrition and illness from volcanic ash might have contributed to the deaths of these young children. One theory, though unlikely, even proposes that the burials could have been part of a ritual to appease the volcano. However, there are no signs of trauma on the bones that would indicate a ritual sacrifice. To the modern mind, the skull helmets seem dark and unsettling, but lead researcher Sarah Jungst found something strangely comforting in the burial. She noted that while dealing with young deaths is emotional, there was clear evidence that the Guangala people took extra care with these burials. They showed a special kind of honor for the departed infants. What do you think? Were these skull helmets symbols of protection, a way to keep ancestors close, or a reaction to a natural disaster? Family murder mystery. Archaeologists had the rare opportunity to solve a 5,000-year-old murder mystery after uncovering a mass grave in Kosyce, Poland. Buried here were 15 people, mostly women and children, who had all met a violent end. But who were these people, and why were they killed? The grave was discovered by Polish archaeologists in 2011, but it wasn't until recently that DNA tests and detailed analysis revealed a surprising fact. Everyone in the grave was related. These people belonged to the ancient globular amphora culture, a group that lived around 5,000 years ago in Central Europe. This culture was known for its distinctive pottery and its mysterious burial customs. These customs often included stone axes and animal remains like cattle bones buried alongside mummified people. But this family's burial was different. There were no grand offerings, no sign of ritual. Instead, it was a brutal scene of massacre. These family members didn't just die, they were killed by repeated blows to the head. Archaeologists believed they were lined up and executed, perhaps by a rival group that wanted to send a message. Imagine you and your family trying to survive in an ancient world where violence between tribes was common. Picture the men of your family, maybe off hunting or defending the group, unaware of the tragedy that had struck their loved ones back home. Finding out the truth would be devastating. The grave contained only one adult male, possibly a father, leading researchers to believe that the other men had likely been away, leaving the women and children vulnerable. As the archaeologists carefully examined how the bodies were placed, they found that the family had been laid to rest with care. This wasn't just a dumping ground. Whoever buried them knew the victims well and arranged the bodies to reflect their family bonds. Thanks to genome-wide analysis, scientists could map the family tree, discovering that several individuals were siblings, although not all of them shared the same mother. This careful interment suggests that the surviving men returned to find their family slain and then gave them a respectful burial. So, what about the killers? While we may never know their exact identities, researchers suspect that this massacre happened as part of the violent struggles between ancient groups. Competing tribes would often raid each other, capturing or killing women and children. The globular amphora people, who were always on the move, did not leave behind large villages or homes. Instead, they roamed with their livestock, living in small, vulnerable groups. And now for a quick break. But first, I wanted to give a shout out and big thank you to Amber, Taylor, Emily, Daniel for supporting this channel. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like this. The Pit of Severed Limbs. What would you do if you were digging around in your backyard and accidentally stumbled upon a pit filled with severed arms, hands, and fingers? Would you think you were living in a house that once belonged to a serial killer? Well, the real discovery didn't happen in the backyard of a home. In reality, the pit was found in a quiet area of a French village near Bergheim in 2016. For archaeologists, this was a stunning yet shocking discovery, one that would reveal secrets about a violent time nearly 6,000 years ago. The pit, known as Pit 157, was discovered during a survey for construction in the area. Most of the ancient pits they found were used as silos or storage for grain and sometimes contained a few bones. But Pit 157, it was different. Inside they found upper limbs, including hands, arms, and fingers, each severed and marked by sharp cuts made with knives or axes. The limbs included those of both adults and a child aged around 12 to 16, which means this wasn't just a burial, it was a scene of violence. What could have happened that led to this gruesome pit? Well, researchers have proposed a few theories. One idea is that these people were victims of war. Ancient Neolithic societies, which many once imagined as peaceful, are now believed to have experienced conflict quite often. These people were not nomads. They were farmers and herders, living in villages where disputes over resources could lead to brutal battles. Some archaeologists speculate that these limbs were hacked off in a violent skirmish or as part of a ritual punishment, a practice not unknown in certain ancient cultures. After the severed limbs were tossed into the pit, the bodies of 7 more people, including 2 adults and 4 children, were thrown in. At the bottom of the pit lay a middle-aged man who had one of his arms cut off and had taken a deadly blow to the head. He may have been killed first, and then the others followed in a wave of violence. But the pit story doesn't end there. Much later, around 5,245 years ago, someone placed the body of a woman into the pit. Strangely, she showed no signs of violence, and her burial seems more respectful, in sharp contrast to the chaos below her. So what happened here? Could this be a rare form of ancient justice? Some think so, but others argue it was more likely an act of warfare or vengeance. While other Neolithic pits from this era also show signs of violence, none are as extreme as Pit 157. Whatever the exact cause, it seems Neolithic life wasn't as peaceful as we once believed. It was a world where people struggled, fought, and sometimes paid with their limbs. Do you think the removal of limbs was part of some ancient ritual, or was it just senseless violence? Let me know in the comments. Witch marks. Gainsborough Old Hall, a massive English manor over 5,000 years old, looks like a haunted house open for business 365 days of the year. This place looks like it has ghosts coming out the wazoo, but truthfully, it's not just spirits people are worried about here, it's witches. This ancient home in England's East Midlands contains a spooky surprise, a series of mysterious carvings known as witches' marks. Rick Berry, a retired firefighter and now volunteer guide, spent years studying the carvings all over Gainsborough. He became curious when he discovered burn marks that hinted at something far beyond regular graffiti. What he found wasn't just the initials of long-dead tenants. It was a legacy of fear, curses, and protection from an era when superstition ran deep. Some marks seemed normal, like initials or names, including one marking from a visit from the notorious King Henry VIII in 1541. But one carving stood out. It was the name William Hickman scratched upside down, a traditional curse. Why Hickman? Well, he wasn't exactly the most popular guy. This merchant bought the manor in 1596, but he earned the locals' hatred by taxing goods and seizing common land for himself. So it's no surprise that someone decided to curse him. According to legend, curses had to be hidden to work, and the curse against Hickman was strategically placed in a corner, possibly veiled behind a curtain. The Old Hall isn't just a cursed site. It's filled with other witches' marks, which are believed to protect the home from evil. Berry discovered scorch marks all around the hall, which seemed intentional rather than accidental. Back then, people thought burn marks could protect against lightning or fires like a magical insurance policy. Berry also found hexafoils, six-petaled flower carvings, which were thought to trap demons, as well as overlapping V-shapes, sometimes called Marian marks. These carvings called on the Virgin Mary for protection. For English heritage, which maintains the manor, the curse was a thrilling find. They had seen protective carvings before, but never a full-on curse inscription like the one at Gainsborough. Why were there so many marks in one place? No one knows for sure. It might have been a way to ward off misfortune in a house with a dramatic history, including ghostly legends. Some visitors claim to have seen the Grey Lady here, who's thought to be a woman named Elizabeth Berg. As legend goes, she died from heartbreak after being locked away by her father, Sir Thomas Berg II, for falling in love with the wrong man. Human bone jewelry. Would you wear jewelry made from the bones of your deceased loved ones if it meant that you were honoring them? It sounds pretty gnarly, but this was a belief held by the ancient people of Russia. On an island in Russia called Yuzhny Olenye Ostrov in the 1930s, archaeologists were digging through ancient graves when they uncovered some eerie ancient jewelry. These pieces weren't your usual bone pendants. They were human bones crafted into jewelry. The story behind this unsettling discovery takes us back thousands of years to the mysterious beliefs of Stone Age people. In the graves on this island, archaeologists found over 177 burials filled with Stone Age artifacts, including pendants carved from animal bones and teeth. Among the typical finds, archaeologists discovered pendants shaped like elks, beavers, and bears. However, a closer look, aided by advanced technology, revealed a darker truth. Using a technique called zooms, short for mass spectrometry, researchers from the University of York analyzed the bone jewelry. They made a startling discovery. 12 out of 37 pieces were, in fact, human bones. Imagine finding out your favorite necklace was once part of someone's leg bone. Talk about a conversation piece. But why on earth would Stone Age people wear jewelry made from human bones? Well, interestingly, the practice of using human bones in jewelry wasn't random. In some cultures, bones from family members were used in jewelry to honor and stay close to loved ones who had passed. However, using bones from enemies was also a way to show victory and dominance. The researchers believe the prehistoric people on Yuzhny Olenye Ostrov might have seen humans and animals as spiritually connected. They may have thought humans could turn into animals and vice versa, and this jewelry might have symbolized that transformation. Thankfully, the bones showed no signs of cannibalism, so it seems these people weren't dining on their relatives or enemies. The pieces were worn smooth with age, erasing any cut marks, which means the jewelry's purpose was likely more symbolic than gory. According to researcher Christina Mannerma, combining animal and human bones in one piece might have represented how deeply humans felt connected to nature. The shrunken head. How does one go about shrinking a human head? I mean, it sounds impossible. Yet people living in the Amazon rainforest have been engaging in this gruesome practice called sansas for years. These shrunken heads aren't just decorations for the Shuar and Aqua tribes living between Ecuador and Peru. They actually hold deep meaning. And for the first time, a new scanning technology revealed the secrets hidden inside one of these ancient artifacts in 2022. It confirmed its authenticity as a real human head, not one of the many fakes that flooded the market in the past. However, it's unclear where this specific artifact came from. These tribes believed that by crafting shrunken heads, they could trap the souls of their enemies. This fascinating ritual involved removing the skull and sewing the eyes and mouth shut, preventing the deceased from seeking revenge. The heads were not merely trophies, but a way to protect oneself from evil spirits. But there's a twist in the story. After missionaries began interacting with the Amazonian people in the 20th century, interest in these exotic artifacts skyrocketed. Suddenly, a huge market sprung up in Europe and America, filled with imitation sansas made from the skins of sloths, monkeys, and even goats. You might wonder, how could anyone mistake an animal for a human head? Well, many of these fakes were crafted so skillfully that it became nearly impossible to distinguish them from the real deal. Andrew Nelson, an archaeologist, pointed out that around 80% of the sansas found today are likely counterfeits. To uncover the truth without damaging this delicate piece, researchers used a state-of-the-art micro-CT scanner. This high-tech machine operates similarly to those found in hospitals, but it offers an incredibly detailed look inside objects. As the shrunken head spun in the scanner, researchers could see the individual hair follicles and layers of skin, details that confirmed it was truly human. What's more is that the findings revealed that this specific head displayed characteristics of both genuine and counterfeit sansas. For instance, the flowing hair of the sansa showed it was real, but the modern thread used to sew it together made its origin unclear. Did a traditional shaman create this head, or was it a commercial production made for outsiders? For now, it's a mystery. Researcher Patricia Ordoneth explained that the history of the Shuar and their shrunken heads is rich yet complicated. With time, the relationship between the Shuar and the practice of creating sansas has changed dramatically. By the 1950s, many Shuar had either forgotten how to make them or chose not to continue the practice due to pressure from outsiders. The Ecuadorian government then officially banned the ritual in the 1960s. While these heads were once seen as trophies of war, they're now recognized as important symbols of the tribe's heritage. Would you ever keep a shrunken head in a private collection of artifacts? Or would that be too creepy for you? Tutankhamun's cursed war trumpets. Is it possible that the ancient Egyptians somehow knew how to imbue inanimate objects with magic? Listen to this and let me know what you think in the comments down below. In 1922, the world held its breath as a remarkable treasure was unearthed in the heart of Egypt. Archaeologist Howard Carter led an expedition into the Valley of the Kings, where the tomb of a young pharaoh named Tutankhamun lay hidden for centuries beneath layers of sand and stone. As they pushed open the door to the tomb, the massive collection of ancient artifacts dazzled the team. Among the extraordinary finds were a set of magnificent trumpets crafted from wood, silver, and bronze. But these weren't just musical instruments, they were keys to the past, whispering secrets of battles and ceremonies. The team was thrilled as they lifted one of the trumpets, revealing its intricate design. It featured a hole for the mouthpiece on one side and a widened end to amplify sound. These ancient instruments were believed to be used by Tutankhamun himself, possibly during military commands or ceremonial events. Fast forward to 1939, when the BBC decided to broadcast a unique event, the sound of one of these ancient trumpets. Rex Keating, a well-known radio personality, was tasked with playing the instrument live on air. But just moments before the broadcast, the electricity in Cairo mysteriously went out. This didn't stop Rex, though. Rex, with candlelight flickering around him, readied himself to transport listeners back to ancient Egypt. He played the trumpet, and for a moment a haunting sound filled the air, connecting the modern world with the echoes of history. However, mere months after this enchanting performance, World War II broke out. This sparked rumors that these trumpets possessed dark, magical powers capable of summoning war. This idea didn't fade away. The legends surrounding Tutankhamun's trumpets began to grow like wildfire. According to whispers, one of the trumpets was played just before the Six-Day War in 1967 and again just before the Gulf War in 1990. And what's even more startling is that during the turbulent times of the Egyptian uprising in 2011, an anonymous museum staff member allegedly played one of the trumpets. He apparently did this just days before the revolution began. So were these mere coincidences, or was there something more to the story? You'd think people would learn their lesson and not play them, right? Egyptologist Hala Hassan suggested that the connection to war was deeply ingrained in the history of these instruments. Originally, trumpets in ancient Egypt were used to signal troops on the battlefield and to scare away evil spirits. The earliest versions were crude, made from animal horns and shells, but they evolved into more sophisticated instruments over time. For a pharaoh like Tutankhamun, who ascended the throne at a young age, having such trumpets in his tomb symbolized military might. They also represented the religious traditions he worked hard to restore after his father's radical religious reforms. Tutankhamun himself lived during a time of great uncertainty, navigating the turbulent aftermath of his father Akhenaten's rule. His reign shifted the religious focus away from the revered god Amun. But upon taking the throne, Tutankhamun quickly changed his name from Tutankhaten back to Tutankhamun. He also re-established the worship of Amun and restored the traditional values of Egypt. His reign may have been short, ending tragically when he died around the age of 18, but his impact was undeniable. So, were the trumpets really cursed? Well, what do you think? The story of Yan Shiwei. In a cave in Xi'an, China, the 1,300-year-old body of someone loyal, brave, and doomed by betrayal was found in an ancient tomb. His name was Yan Shiwei, a respected magistrate in ancient China. But it wasn't just him who was discovered. Beside him were the remains of his wife, Lady Pei. So what happened here? Why did someone so dedicated to his ruler end up buried in shame? Pause the video here and let me hear your guesses in the comments. Well, the answer lies in his loyalty to China's only female emperor, Wu Zetian. Wu was not your typical ruler. She climbed the ranks from concubine to empress dowager and finally declared herself emperor in 690 AD, founding the Zhou dynasty. Wu Zetian is famous for her powerful rule, which was as innovative as it was ruthless. Not everyone was ready for a woman on the throne though, and rebellion soon sparked. During this chaotic time, Yan Shiwei showed his loyalty in an extreme way. He reportedly broke his own arm. But why? He did this in order to resist Duke Zhu Jingye, a rebel leader who was trying to convince Yan to betray his emperor. I mean, talk about commitment. Thanks to his courage, Wu Zetian rewarded him with a magistrate position and the title of Grand Master. Yan Shiwei thrived under Wu Zetian's rule, enforcing order and keeping the people in line. The inscriptions on his tomb describe him as strict as autumn frost, but also warming as the winter sun, meaning he balanced toughness with fairness. For 9 years he supported Wu Zetian and earned his place as one of her most trusted officials. But then, disaster struck. In the end, Yan's loyalty wasn't enough to save him. His brother Ji Wei became a threat to Wu Zetian, opposing her reign. Back then, family loyalty was taken seriously, sometimes fatally so. Yan Shiwei was sentenced to die under guilt by association. His entire family, except for Lady Pei, who had died years earlier, was executed. Yan Shiwei was buried without honor. It was a shocking end for a man who had once stood so close to power. But thankfully, history has a way of setting things right. After Wu Zetian was overthrown, the Tang dynasty restored honor to Yan Shiwei's name, and he was finally reburied in a proper family tomb alongside Lady Pei. Archaeologists found the tomb in 2002, uncovering faded relics from his life like colorful ceramic statues, a disintegrated headdress, and most importantly, the epitaphs that told his story. Wu Zetian's legacy is complicated, to say the least. While she broke barriers and strengthened China, she also used harsh measures, mass executions, manipulation, and even a network of spies to secure her power. And yet she supported education, the arts, and provided more opportunities for lower classes. This made her a ruler of both ruthless ambition and surprising achievements. The story of Yan Shiwei isn't just about one man's loyalty, but about the dangerous dance of power and loyalty under one of history's most fascinating rulers. ancient death chamber. What if I told you that beneath the streets of a modern Turkish city there lies a 2,300-year-old network of ancient dungeons filled with torture chambers and execution rooms? It sounds like a scene from a Stephen King novel, doesn't it? Well, this is exactly what archaeologists found below the city of Bursa. That's right, hidden beneath the city walls and local houses, these gruesome chambers were part of a much bigger network of towers and corridors where prisoners were brought for unspeakable fates. Imagine walking through your city, not realizing that deep below in the darkness there were once chambers designed for torture and execution. Professor Ibrahim Yilmaz from Uludağ University led the excavation in 2014, which was part of a larger project to restore Bursa's ancient city walls. While restoring the walls, his team stumbled upon the Zindan Kapı, or Dungeon Gate area. What they found was chilling. An entire dungeon complex complete with eerie tunnels leading to towers and chambers that were designed specifically for torturing and executing prisoners. But what exactly did they find down there? For starters, there was the infamous Bloody Well. According to Professor Yilmaz, executioners, who were said to be deaf and mute to spare them from hearing the screams, beheaded prisoners over this well. The heads would fall in, while the bodies were either given back to the families or tossed into nearby streams. Some say these executioners even sold the bodies to families who wanted to bury their loved ones, making this gruesome business almost medieval. The chambers also revealed old torture rooms filled with various tools that were used on unfortunate victims. Any torture device you can think of, it was likely found in this horrific place. Which discovery from today's list did you find the most shocking? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you're at it, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.